How's it going, folks? Stu here, and it's finally that time, baby. It's London Film Festival season. I say season, it's a few weeks, but it's the best time of the year. I'm super pumped about it. This year's finally feeling a little bit more like a regular programming festival. We've got some in-person screenings. It's been an absolute delight getting back into screens with some other folks. And this year's edition of the festival kicked off with a nice little bang in the form of Jaymes Samuels' The Harder They Fall, or should I say, The Harder They Don't Fall, because it was a good film. I promise these intros are going to get better. So as I said, The Harder They Fall is directed by Jaymes Samuel. It comes out on Netflix later on in the year. I believe the beginning of November. Might be wrong. Didn't know a huge amount about this one going into it, other than that it's got an absolutely stacked cast. You know how much I love me some stacked casts. And that it's a Western, which is admittedly a genre which I haven't spent a huge amount of time with. I'm no Western aficionado. And I gotta say, I was really pleasantly surprised with this one. I thought it was a really fun time, which is surprisingly something I didn't quite expect going into a Western like this. You know, a long Western, you kind of assume they're gonna be this brooding, slow-paced journey through the Wild West, if you will. But immediately Samuels, with his direction here, just establishes this as a different tone to your usual Western. And it's that tone which absolutely picks it up from what I kind of feared it might end up being, which is just another bog standard Western with a great ensemble cast. And this thing has got energy to it, and I really enjoyed that about it. It's a relatively simple story of revenge between someone and someone else. Don't want to spoil too much. And it's got your usual littering of Western tropes, you know, train robberies, saloon shootouts, all of those things. But it's absolutely the cast, the performances, and the direction which pull it into something much more fun and more vibrant. And what a cast it is. I didn't really want this review just to be like a complete gushing over the amazing cast it's got, but it has an amazing cast, and they're all smashing it. Kind of hard to pick a standout, in my opinion. I thought everyone brought different things to the table, and they've all got charisma in their own ways, which makes for a really enjoyable character experience watching these people interact with each other. But I think Regina King and Lakeith Stanfield, for me, were the two that I was like, every time they were on screen, I just didn't want their scenes to end. Unsurprising, I guess. Absolutely love Regina King. You guys know that at this point. And I also really love Lakeith Stanfield, so maybe I was never going to not love them in this film. But I think those two in particular just were obviously having a lot of fun in their roles. Not that everyone else isn't, but they have something to their characters which was just completely electric at every point. Jonathan Majors in the lead kills it. I mean, this dude's just having a year and a half in it, and he's only going to get stronger. I've yet to see anything that he didn't really nail role-wise, and this is, again, a kind of different role from him. You just kind of can't help but love the guy. He's got this swagger to him, but he's also got this charm. He's funny, but he's also cool. I think I just want to be him, to be honest. I'll be honest, it's probably something I could actually just say about everyone in this. I mean, the costumes and the Wild West, the hats. I just want to be everyone. Idris Elba's in the film. Admittedly, I kind of think maybe controversial. He's maybe the weakest link in the film. Not that he's bad, but just maybe his character doesn't have as much screen time or as much fun scenes as everyone else does. Zazie Beetz is in the film. Again, really, really solid. Delroy Lindo's in there. I mean, I always want more from Delroy Lindo in films because he's so amazing, and so when he's not like the prominent big thing in a film, it's always a little bit of a disappointment, but he was really good in there. Also nice to see RJ Kyler in the film, who I love from Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Don't know if you remember that film. Absolutely rip your heart out weepy of a film, but he was great in that, and he has some amazing comedic stuff in this film, which is again something that really surprised me here. It's got a really good sense of comedic tone, this film. The whole thing is filled with really effective laughs that never completely undermine the tone of the film and the action it's going for and the tension, but always seem to come at the right moment and always seem to just land really, really well. It's got a great sense of comedy, and I think Jaymes Samuels' direction is so sort of inventive and creative that it means that we're seeing all of these usual tropes we've seen in Western films before, but done through a slightly different, more playful lens, and it's refreshing to watch, I think. And it's all also really interestingly driven a lot by the music, which is, I guess, true of a lot of Western classics, which have their own specific soundtrack vibe and tone. And so I guess maybe this is a way of modernizing that side of the genre, because what Samuels does with music here is really, really interesting. It's a very modern soundtrack which juxtaposes really interestingly with the very sort of classical elements that are being thrown into the mix here. And I believe Samuels comes from a predominantly music-based background before film, which maybe explains why it's so interested in weaving its way through with sound and with music. And I think it's really effectively done. I guess it just helps it's got amazing performances, and also that it looks beautiful as well. It's a gorgeous film to look at. There's something really satisfying about those kind of Western town sets, which you sort of just know are just a set built in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this big old desert. But it's cool to see that shit, and it's also cool to see that shit get torn apart in shootouts, so that's always fun. That all being said, I do think that the film sort of slumps a little bit in the middle. I found that the initial setup was a lot of fun, I guess in that sort of surprising way, which I didn't quite know what I was going to be getting into in this film. So it's like, wow, this is different and fun. I'm having a good time. And once it's done all that setup and it starts to settle into the plot of the film, the more dramatic beats in the middle, which are necessary to deliver the narrative on a whole, so it doesn't completely derail things, but it just sort of begins to slump a little bit there. And I'm not sure if it's because those dramatic beats aren't perhaps as interesting as the way that the story's being delivered up until that point, or if it's because it's a lot at all points, and so you sort of get a little bit numb to the fun, creative things it's doing. But either way, there was definitely a part in this film where I sort of found myself, you know, you're just crossing that bridge from a brilliant beginning to a great ending. It's a little bit of a wonky bridge, if that makes much sense. Don't know why I needed to do an analogy there. Slumped in the middle. Luckily, it comes back around for a really fun and exciting ending, although I will say, I sort of feel like this film just kind of ends, like, very quickly, in a way which was fun while I was watching it, but in retrospect, I sort of wish there'd been a little bit more on the end, just a tiny bit longer for us to absorb some of the story beats that do get dropped in that final climax. That being said, though, there's definitely something to be appreciated about the fact that the film knows when not to overstay its welcome, doing things outside of just being fun, unique, interesting, creative way to approach the thing. It's just a really fun Western that's often very funny, very tense at certain points, sort of delivers everything you kind of want to get from a Western, but it's doing it all in a refreshing, modernized way by taking a black cast into a genre which is traditionally very white dominated, commenting on that in the film, but also playing with that. Never really taking itself too seriously, but taking itself seriously enough to pull off the stuff it's doing. Don't know if that made sense. As far as the kickoff to the festival goes, I thought it was a really good time. Very excited to check this one out again when it drops on Netflix later in the year. But what about you guys? Did you manage to catch The Harder They Fall at this year's film festival? Are you waiting for it to drop on Netflix later in the year? Let me know whatever you thought about it in the comments down below. And get ready for a whole butt ton of more London Film Festival reviews, because they coming daily, to be specific. So make sure you're not missing any of those by subscribing down there. And while you're there, why not follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, where I'll be updating you with my initial reactions to films when I am seeing them. Until next time, I'm off to see some more films. One absolute bloody shocker, it's a film festival.